Hi, Dave Roscoe here. It is Wednesday, June 4th, 2025, and we have a first for migrations, and I'll tell you all about it in just a bit. There's another Crypto Times article about pioneers rejecting the idea of a Binance listing, and we'll get to that as well. But first, the metrics. The circulating supply is 7.30 billion Pi with 52,933 user accounts migrated in the last 24 hours, totaling 18.9 million Pi. There is 46.3 million Pi in the Pi migration wallet. Migrations, once again, were still happening early this morning. I'm happy to report a first with regard to migrations. User migrations have now been going nonstop for almost 36 hours. And that is a first. I've never seen Pi migrations go 24 hours straight, let alone 36. They're really making a push to get these migrations done. And that's good. The migrated unlocked rewards is at $2.1 billion with 9.9 million Pi unlocked in the last 24 hours and now free to be traded on the open market. Looking at the price action, the Pi coin is currently trading at 65 cents, which is up 0.23% from this time 24 hours ago. The market cap is at $4.79 billion, which is up 0.6%. The daily trading volume is at $55.82 million, and that is down 31.18%. The volume keeps dropping. The price is doing strange things. We were about 64 cents yesterday, and I thought we'd end up trading sideways, but once again, I was wrong. We actually moved up a bit and then started trading sideways at around 65 cents. And you can see here that we had significant amount of buying pressure here, but then it has since kicked in at around, say, 65.6 cents. The selling pressure kicked in and has driven it back down. But this is interesting behavior. I don't quite know what to make of it. Like I said many times, volume is low, so be careful out there. This is an interesting article from Crypto Times, and it reads, Pi Network Binance listing talks spark outrage. Pioneers say no. A recent poll by a Pi Network community account on X asked, do you want to see Pi listed on Binance? The majority of users said no to the idea. Many of them say the network isn't ready for a listing and that some serious problems need to be fixed first. I don't disagree with that. I think the network isn't ready yet, and that's probably the main reason why these listings haven't happened. If you think about it, there's only 34 nodes running on any given day. And as I've pointed out in the past, the node response to moving of validators is not very fast. I think that the network right now is severely limited in the transaction count and speed that it can execute. And that's not going to fly when we list on a major network like Coinbase or Binance. And you can see the poll question here. Why are Pi Network users refusing the Binance listing? Users say one of the biggest issues that has to be solved before the Binance listing is the KYC process. KYC, or Know Your Customer, is needed to verify users' identities and unlock their tokens, but the system is broken. Some users say they've been waiting for years but still haven't passed KYC, even though they completed the steps. One user said, not until my KYC gets approved, still waiting, 4 months and counting. Well, this is really interesting, and this is where it starts to get a little funny. And when I say funny, I mean not in a good way. KYC has nothing to do with the Binance listing. Neither does the say of the pioneers, to be honest with you. Yeah, KYC has problems, but that doesn't matter because if there's enough Pi coin out there and the interest is there and the network is ready, then it's going to get listed whether the users say they want it or not. Which is not to say the KYC system isn't currently broken. It's kind of funny. The issue comes from a bug in the system where even if a person completes KYC, their Pi stays locked if others in their security circle don't pass too. This system needs multiple people to approve a KYC request. However, not enough users are joining the Pi validation program, so the process gets stuck. Well, this is another problem. And again, it's not a problem with the KYC, it's a problem of people's perceptions. There is no bug. Unverified Pi is literally a gift from the Pi network for referring other users. Until they verify to the same satisfaction that you were verified, that these people are real, then their contribution means nothing for you. So that's not a bug. That's KYC working exactly the way KYC is meant to. And they're not just going to give you free Pi without verifying these users first. And yes, KYC requires multiple individuals to pass a single KYC, but that's largely changed. Most human interaction with KYC now is because the AI can't deal with it. And a lot of people are reporting that the number of KYC applications that they see has dropped dramatically, which indicates to me that the AI is doing more and more of this work. Now, there are tons of problems. For example, tentative KYC. I am now convinced that a large majority of tentative KYC is intentional to control the flow of Picoin on the market. People with perfectly valid KYCs suddenly going tentative, and is it a big coincidence that a large number of them are people who've been in the program for a long time and likely have a large amount of Picoin sitting in their balances? In a lot of cases, tentative KYC can be resolved by doing things like changing your password, verifying your email, re-verifying your wallet, and those sorts of things. For a subset of that bunch, that's just not possible. I have tried many, many times. I'm still in tentative KYC, and there is nothing wrong with my KYC application. I've been approved for years. But the difference is they don't want my Pi and people like me flooding the market. This is speculation. I don't know this for sure, but it's a pretty suspicious group of people that are currently in tentative status. Almost all of the ones I've talked to are people who've been in for a long time. Some people even think Pi Network might be doing this on purpose to keep tokens locked. One user said they got muted by moderators after questioning the delay. Other users are also upset that their tokens were locked without warning or lost because they missed a deadline. One early user said he lost 2,500 Pi. Okay, there's a lot of things to unpack here. Now, whether the Pi core team is doing this on purpose, I don't know. But like I just said, I suspect that is part of it. As far as getting muted by moderators, I spend a lot of time in the Pi chats, and I have seen the way people come in there and approach the moderators. These are volunteers, people. You come in there with an attitude, that's not going to go well for you. If you ask questions that they don't have answers for, it's a crapshoot about what the outcome is going to be. Because what they don't want is for somebody to come in asking tough questions that there are no answers for, at least not by the moderators, and that riles up everybody else in the room. And they don't want that. They don't want a whole room latching on to this one topic and then causing a real problem for them. So they'll mute you. I'm not saying it's right, but think about what they're doing. You have maybe 1-2 moderators in a room, and they're getting flooded with the same questions over and over and over and over again. Most of that's because people just hop in the room and ask their question. They don't bother to see if the question's already been answered 100 times before, which they could do by simply scrolling up for a minute. No, they just come in and ask their question. That is not a recipe for happy moderators. And then someone else comes in asking tough questions, and oftentimes with an apparent attitude and an air of indignation about the state of the Pi network. And it's not the fault of the moderators, and there's nothing they can do about it. So yeah, they tend to have a short fuse, and you will get muted. I'm not saying the people that are asking these questions are wrong. They're just going to the wrong source for answers. And to be honest with you, there is no source. If it doesn't come from the Pi core team, there is no answer. I think people have an overinflated view of what the moderators know versus the average person. Yes, they do get a little bit more information about what's going on, especially when there's bugs in the system or things are behaving poorly, because they know people are going to be asking questions about it. And oftentimes they don't even get that. Trust me, guys, the moderators are not much more privileged than you or I. Keep that in mind when you ask questions they can't answer. There are also concerns about the wallet. Some users said the wallet system needs an upgrade. They have reported that their Pi balances are not loading after the mainnet migration. Yeah, we've already covered this. They're definitely doing something behind the hood. And they frequently work on the wallets because the wallets are the key to the system. And that's how they're going to integrate with third-party apps and services. The Pi Network team gave users until March 14th, 2025 to finish KYC and move their tokens to Mainnet. If not, they lose access to their Pi. The price of Pi has dropped over 10% in the last week and now trades at 65 cents, according to CoinMarketCap. Now, this is another thing. A lot of people who claim to have been in early were in fact in early, and then they disappeared for years. And then they got wind that the Pi network was about to go live, or maybe a friend of theirs told them. And they came back to the app only to find that either they've already missed the deadline and they forfeited their Pi, or they were very close to losing it and could not complete their KYC in time, because sometimes KYC doesn't go smoothly. And of course, that's the fault of the Pi core team, right? There are users who were in the system for years who never passed KYC, not because of anything to do with problems with KYC, just that they didn't do it. And they had to draw a line in the sand to say, okay, all of these old accounts have to have a status before we can go to Open Mainnet. They just had to. So they set this line in the sand, which, by the way, they extended several times to say, look, get your KYC done. Had nothing to do with migration. People said it had to do with migration. Users aren't in control of migration, so it can't be that. You had to get your KYC done. And if you didn't, your Pi would be forfeited. And if your Pi was forfeited, any contribution that your mining efforts had for somebody else was also forfeited. So imagine the combinatorial issues here when it comes to calculating unverified Pi. I started out at one point, I had 150 some odd people in my earning team. By the end, before Open Mainnet, maybe 20 were still active. Now, my unverified Pi has been unchanged, even though I'm sure a lot of it's going to disappear. Now, why hasn't it disappeared yet? Well, because they're not ready to try to unravel that rat's nest. But it's going to happen. And it's the reason why they had to draw that deadline, because if they didn't, they were just pushing the problem farther and farther down the road, and it would get bigger and bigger. At some point, they will work it out, but it's going to take a long time. On the other hand, other users who are done with their KYC are furious that new coins like Bondex are getting listed on Binance, but Pi coin is still not considered. Well, one of the issues with the Pi network is that they are a coin. They're not a token. They have their own blockchain. And that poses a much bigger technical hurdle for getting listed on exchanges, because you have to be able to bridge the blockchains. Now, tokens are easy, right? Tokens are created on anyone's blockchain. If, for example, I create a token on BNB, then that can get listed on Binance tomorrow. Or if I create it on Ethereum, that can get listed very quickly. But Pi Network is a new blockchain. And to list a coin on a new blockchain is a much bigger deal. So you can't really judge the path of one coin up to the market versus another. And I honestly think that the largest reason Why Pi Network is not on major exchanges is because the Pi Network does not yet want it there. I could be wrong. Based on my assessment of the Pi Network as it stands today, they couldn't handle that kind of volume. A lot of negativity gets put out on the social media because the project that they're involved in doesn't meet their expectations, either because the white paper says it's supposed to go a certain way and it's not quite doing that because of one reason or another, or because they don't have a clue how things work, but it just doesn't work the way they want it to. And rather than looking to understand what's happening and to perhaps put it into context, it's easier to complain because that's what people do. Social media is a great outlet for people's anger. And it takes a lot of work to walk that back, which is a lot of what I do. Well, that's all I've got for today. There's not a lot going on, but if anything breaks, I'll be sure to let you know. But until then, don't panic, stay the course, and remember, the success of the Pi Network begins with you. Pi to the moon. Peace.